Thank you very much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. A reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 2nd Chapter, The Lord in the Heart, Text 12. Adina Lila Asite Shanalosayad Brum Bhanga Samuchita Bur Yanugrayam Iksheta Chintamayam Enam Ishvaram Yavan Mano Dharanaya Vitishyati Andina Lila Asit Andina Lila Hasite Shanolasad Rupangasam Shuchita Boryamagraham Iksheta Chinna Mayamena Mishwaram Yavan Manodarayayan Vishishtate Adina Lila Haisik Shanalolyasad Rupanga-samushchita Burya-nugraham Iksheta Chinna Mayamena Mishwaram Yavan Manodarayana Shavistate Adina Lila Hisite Shanalusad Rupanga-samuchita Burya-nugraham Iksheta Chinna Mayamena Mishwaram Yavan Manodarayane Vashishyate. Please repeat.
Adina Lila Hasitekshanolasat
Adina Lila Hasitekshanolasat
Rubanga Sangsuchita Boryanugraham
Rupangazam Chita Boryanukam
Iksheta Chinta Mayamena Mishwaram
Ekatintamayamnitamishukam
Yavan Manodharana Yavatishtate
Manodharana Yavatishtate Adina Lila Hasitekshano Lasad
Adina Lila Hasitekshanolasat
Rupanga Sangsuchita Bhuryanugraham
Rupangazam Chita Boryanukam
Iksheta Chinta Mayam Enam Ishvarang
Iksheta Chinmayam Mishwaram
Yavan Manodharana Yavatishtate
Yavan Manodharanya Vichishtate
Adina Lila Hasitekshano Lasad
Adina Lila Hasitekshanolasat
Ruhavaga Sham Shuchita Ikshita Bodhi Anugraham.
Mruvanga Samuchitamoyanugraham.
Ikshita Chintamayam Enam Ishvaram.
Iksheta Chintamayam Ishwaram.
Yavan Mano Dharan Yavat Tishate.
Yavan Manodharayaya Vishishtate.
Adina Lila Hasitek Shanola Sad
Adina Lila Hasite Shanolasad.
Bhrubanga Samsuchita Buryanugraham
Ruvanga Samuchita Bhoyanugraham.
Iksheta Chinta Mayamenam Ishwaram
Iksheta Chintamayamena Ishwaram.
Yavan Manodharana Yavatishtate
Yavan Manodharayaya Vishishtate.
Adina Lila Hasitekshanola Sad.
Adina Lila Hasite Shanolasad.
Ruvanga Samsuchita Buri Anugraham.
Rubanga Samuchita Bhoyanugraham.
Iksheta Chittamayam Enam Ishvaram.
Sheta Chinmayamanina Ishwaram.
Yavan Manodharana Yavatishtahe.
Yavan Manodharayana Vishishtate. Thank you. Adina, very magnanimous. Lila, pastimes. Hasita, smiling. Ikshana, by glancing over. Ulasat, glowing. Rubanga, signals of the eyebrow. Samsuchita, indicated. Buri, extensive. Anugraham, benediction. Iksheta, one must concentrate on. Chintamayam, transcendental. Enam, this particular. Ishvaram, the Supreme Lord. Yavat, as long as. Manaha, the mind. Dharanaya, by meditation. Avatishtati, can be fixed. Translation. The Lord's magnanimous pastimes and the glowing glancing of his smiling face are all indications of his extensive benedictions. One must therefore concentrate on this transcendental form of the Lord as long as the mind can be fixed on him by meditation. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In Bhagavad Gita 12.5, it is said that the impersonalist undergoes a series of difficult programs on account of his impersonal meditation. But the devotee, due to the Lord's personal service, progresses very easily. Impersonal meditation is therefore a source of suffering for the impersonalist. Here the devotee has an advantage over the impersonalist philosopher. The impersonalist is doubtful about the personal feature of the Lord, and therefore he always tries to meditate upon something which is not objective. For this reason, there is an authentic statement in the Bhagavatam regarding the positive concentration of the mind on the factual form of the Lord. The process of meditation recommended herein is Bhakti Yoga, or the process of devotional service, after one is liberated from the material conditions. Jnana Yoga is the process of liberation from the material conditions. After one is liberated from the conditions of material existence, example, when one is nirvita, as previously stated herein, or when one is freed from all material necessities, one becomes qualified to discharge the process of Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga includes Jnana Yoga, or in other words, the process of pure devotional service simultaneously serves the purpose of Jnana Yoga. Liberation from material conditions is automatically achieved by the gradual development of pure devotional service. These effects of Bhakti Yoga are called anartha nivritti. These which are artificially acquired gradually disappear. Things which are artificially acquired gradually disappear along the process of Bhakti Yoga. Meditation on the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, the first processional step. One must know its effect by anartha-nivritti. The grossest type of anartha which binds the conditioned soul in material existence is sex desire. And this sex desire gradually develops in the union of the male and female. When the male and female are united, the sex desire is further aggravated by the accumulation of buildings, children, friends, relatives, and wealth. When all these are acquired, the conditioned soul becomes overwhelmed by such entanglements, and the false sense of egotism, or the sense of myself and mine, becomes prominent, and the sex desire expands to various political, social, altruistic, philanthropic, and many other unwanted engagements, resembling the foam of sea waves, which becomes very prominent at one time and at the next moment vanishes, as quickly as a cloud in the sky. The conditioned soul is encircled by such products as well as the products of sex desire, and therefore Bhakti Yoga leads to gradual evaporation of sex desire, which is summarized by 3 headings, namely profit, adoration, and distinction. All conditioned souls are mad after these different forms of sex desire, and one shall see for himself how much he has been freed from such material hankerings based primarily on sex desire. As a person feels hunger and is satisfied after eating each morsel of foodstuff, he must simply be able to see the degree to which he has been freed from sex desire. Sex desire is diminished along with its various forms by the process of Bhakti Yoga, because Bhakti Yoga automatically, by the grace of the Lord, effectively results in knowledge and renunciation, even if the devotee is not materially very well educated. Knowledge means knowing things as they are, and if by deliberation it is found out that there are things which are at all unnecessary, naturally the person who has acquired knowledge leaves aside such unwanted things. When the conditioned soul finds, by culture of knowledge, that material necessities are unwanted things, he becomes detached from such unwanted things. This stage of knowledge is called vairagya, or attachment of unwanted things. We have previously discussed that the transcendentalist is required to become self-sufficient and should not beg from the rich blind persons to fulfill the bare necessities of life. Shukadeva Goswami has suggested some alternatives for the bare necessities of life, namely the problem of eating, sleeping, and shelter, but he has not suggested any alternative for sex satisfaction. One who has the sex desire still with him should not at all try to accept the renounced order of life. For one who has not attained to the stage, there is no question of a renounced order of life. So by the gradual process of devotional service under the guidelines of a proper spiritual master, and following the principles of the Bhagavatam, one must be able at least to control the gross sex desire before one accepts the renounced order of life effectually. So purification means getting free gradually from sex desire, and this is attained by meditation on the person of the Lord as described herein. Beginning from the feet, one should try to go upwards artificially. One should not try to go upwards artificially without seeing himself how much he has been released from this sex desire. The smiling face of the Lord is the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and there are many upstarts who at once try to begin with the 10th canto, and especially with the 5 chapters which delineate the Rasa Leela of the Lord. This is certainly improper. By such improper study or hearing the Bhagavatam, the material opportunists have played havoc by indulgence in sex life in the name of Bhagavatam. This vilification of Bhagavatam is rendered by the acts of the so-called devotees. One should be free from all kinds of sex desire before he tries to make a show of recital of Bhagavatam. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur clearly defines the import of purification as cessation from sex indulgence. He says, Yata yata discha suryati vishaya lampayatam kechati taja tata tarayaditi charasudi taratmayeva daneya tatpramayuktam This as one gets free from the intoxication of sex indulgence by purification of intelligence, one should step forward for the next meditation. Or in other words, the process of meditation on the different limbs of the transcendental body of the Lord should be enhanced in proportion to the progress of purification of the heart. This conclusion is that those who are still entrapped by sex indulgence should never progress to meditation above the feet of the Lord. Therefore, recital of Srimad Bhagavatam by them should be restricted to the first and second cantos of the great literature. One must be complete in the purificatory process by assimilating the contents of the first 9 cantos. Then one should be admitted into the realm of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Wow, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Such a nectarian purport. Om Ajnana Tarandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Andina Lila, Lord's magnanimous pastimes. Here we're discussing. So magnanimous, it means overcoming the reciprocation of what the person rendering service actually deserves. This is a nice definition for it. Or in other words, magnanimous can mean getting way more than you anticipated. The reward way outweighs what you ever even expected. So we cannot conceive what is in store for us by reading this Srimad Bhagavatam and rendering devotional service to the Supreme Personality, Godhead. So in the beginning, people approach Bhakti Yoga because they want to be free from different material attachments. They see there's things in their heart that they may be attached to that have caused them some distress. So naturally, in the beginning, this Bhakti Yoga process were motivated by some selfish desire. No doubt. But simply taking up this lifestyle, we automatically become free from these material desires. They fall away. Prabhupada mentions we don't even have to become very learned. We just have to render service to God. And these material designations in our heart and these unwanted things that we're struggling with, namely the 4 pillars of sinful activity, they automatically fall away when you take up this lifestyle. So the true wealth that the bhakti process sows is not only getting free from all of these different material attachments, but sowing the attraction to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Jai. Shri Shri Gauranatai ki jai. So surely that is the most magnanimous thing available to mankind. And we know that the most magnanimous incarnation of the Lord and the most satisfying pastimes of the Lord, it differs from devotee to devotee, but surely in my heart I know it to be of Shri Shri Gauranatai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. They are the most magnanimous because they're giving out this ever-flowing well of bhakti, of love of God to anyone without discrimination. Where previously it was very hard to establish love of God, prema. It's like unheard of. But they were giving it out to the malechas, the meat eaters, the yavanas. They go through so many magnanimous pastimes, just giving this love out. So Rupa Goswami, he certainly certifies Namo Mahavananaya Krishna Prem Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurtiche Namaha. So we've never even seen a more magnanimous personality than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda Prabhu. Meanwhile, we hear this and we start to grow old and we maybe start to slacken in our sadhana. And we think, man, this process is difficult. This is hard like anything. I don't know if I have enough time. I don't know if I have enough willpower to actually come to that pure platform. Yet Nitai, Gauranga, they're giving it out freely and they say, just take it. You know. So why am I becoming frustrated with spiritual life? Why am I feeling like I'm not advancing? Why am I feeling, why? It's almost there, but I just can't progress. I can't get over this hill. Well, surely we have something unwanted still in the heart. We have to give it up. This ocean of mercy, it's flowing everywhere, and a dam is put up as soon as we choose to cling on to these unwanted things in the heart. The flowing ocean of mercy, it actually ceases to flow any further if we're clinging on to these things. And Prabhupada, he's outlining that these things, they're arising from sex desire in this purport. So the purport describes that the conditioned soul is infected with a particular material desire, which is the root of so many other material desires. The sex desire is not just simply a physical phenomenon. We have to understand this. This is not just nature's law, as some scientists want to proclaim. The sex desire, it has many corollaries, as Prabhupada is giving us in this wonderful purport. In the purport, he's describing when the male and female are united, the sex desire is further aggravated by accumulation of buildings, children, friends, relatives, and wealth. We may be thinking, oh, isn't that what life is all about? But Prabhupada, he's saying, now we are hearing the sex desire is aggravated. So it should make us think, aren't I already aggravated enough? Aren't things already hard enough in the material world as they are? So why would I put more aggravation on top of that? And the sex desire, it just brings more aggravation. That's what Prabhupada is telling. So the conditioned soul, once he gives into this sex desire, he becomes overcome with all types of different material attachments and encumbrances. And in turn, his false sense of egotism becomes greater and greater. So what is this false sense of egotism that we speak of? His false sense of egotism is this sense of my and mine, things pertaining to this body, of, oh, I want to do this for myself, thinking I am like this or I am like that. But naturally, so let's take a look. How is my sense of false egotism, is it increasing? If it is increasing, then we know that is a product of sex desire, giving into the sex desire. But however, if it is decreasing, we know that this is the effect of taking the sufficient remedy of bhakti yoga, the sufficient medicine, the daily dose. Over time, when somebody takes a medicine, hopefully their symptoms, they start to subside and decrease. So if we can take this medicine of bhakti yoga, this sex desire or this false sense of egotism, it will slowly start to decrease, and the sense of my and mine will surely be evaporated. It will be diminished. Lord Kapila Dev in the third canto, he mentions just like the fire of the digestive fire in the stomach digests food with the stomach acids and so forth, this process of bhakti yoga, it digests this false sense of egotism. It reduces it to none. So this sense of mine and myself, it diminishes, just like the foodstuffs in our body diminishes once the digestive juices get flowing. So this is wonderful. This is the nectar that Srimad Bhagavatam can give us. Srimad Bhagavatam, it's showing us how we can look at the world and its interactions and see how they're just expansions of gross sex desire. Whether it is Prabhupada says political, social, altruistic, philanthropic, and many unwanted other engagements. So somehow these engagements, they can all be traced back to the sex desire. So it may be very difficult to see that now in our conditioned state. But once we associate with the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam, we can start to scope our vision. We can start to clean the lens of these glasses that we're wearing and actually see clearly from the Shastra and see, wow, everything actually can be traced back to sex desire. So I was hearing recently, there's an example given. I was watching a Prabhupada Memories, as I like to do in the evenings. And this Prabhu, I forget who was saying, but he was saying that they were in New York. It was about the mid-70s. And a newly initiated, mid-20-something sannyasi sits down, and he's sitting there, and he's trying to look, very staunch. He's a new sannyasi, and his spiritual master is right there with him. And he's fixing his mind on Srila Prabhupada, trying to appear to be some, staunch sannyasi. And a very fair lady comes and sits down next to him. And he's trying to act like, his attention is totally not deviated or anything, and he's focusing on Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada looks over at her, looks at the sannyasi, says, "These women in New York, they're very beautiful, aren't they? Have you seen them?" And the sannyasi, he's like trying to compose himself, What the heck? My spiritual master is saying that these women are beautiful in New York. And all of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada, he starts shaking his head. And he starts looking around. And he says, "Look at these beautiful buildings, these big skyscrapers. Look at all these businesses. Look at all these people going from here and there, rushing to make more and more money." He says, "It is all a product of sex desire. It is all because the women in New York are so attractive." So this is a very, very deep realization that Prabhupada was giving. This is a realization that we can get from Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything can be traced to the sex desire. So this Srimad Bhagavatam, it enables us to see through this veil of Maya and just see all these people coming and going, all these businesses, this whole philanthropic activity that they're being engaged in. It is just like the foam on the sea waves. Sometimes it feels very prominent, feels very, it's very visible, it's in action. But the next moment it's gone. And in this way, this material life and all of the activities pertaining to it, it comes and goes, it comes and goes, comes and it goes. So this sex desire or this family force, this is the motivating factor behind men having to go and work every day and waste their lives away doing something they don't want to do for money, to think that they need to support their family, There was a famous economist who was saying that just this, that this is the source why the government gets people to work, because there's family. And now, this day and age, we see that family life, it's becoming less and less prominent. It's not at the center so much anymore. So the leaders of demoniac society, they're finding newer and newer ways to entice the working class to feel like they need more and more to provide for themselves, because they are no longer thinking about providing for their family. Because Kali Yuga is progressing. So the Bhagavad Gita says, "Matra sparsha tu kanteya, shishno sashuka dukadaha." Krishna is telling Arjuna, the permanent appearance of happiness and distress are coming and going, just like the winter and summer seasons. These things are very temporary. When we're feeling happy, we're smiling, we're having a great day. Oh, things are great. Somebody asks, how are you? Oh, I was having a great time last night. I'm doing great today. I'm so happy. Look at me. And then when we're feeling sad, my life is horrible. I feel so bad. Things, they're so hard. Why do I feel so bad? I didn't ask to be put in this position. I have problems. It's so hard for us because we're just clinging to these temporary things that are just coming and going. But Prabhupada is saying they're just like foam on the waves. Why cling to them? So this is something that's difficult, to understand in the beginning. But if we can associate with devotees and get the nectar from Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavad Gita and all of the other bona fide shastras that our acharyas have given us, we can develop this vision. And we can start to render service to Krishna. Bhaktamam abhijananti. So a devotee is someone who is possessed. Just like a person possessed by a demon is possessed. But a devotee, he's possessed by wanting pure love of God. He's possessed of wanting to understand Krishna like anything. Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Because he knows that this is the perfect contemplation of my mind. This is the perfect engagement for all of my life's activities, is to center it around understanding God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in that way, he becomes possessed by how can I render more service to the Supreme Personality of God? Somebody who is actually developing love for God, they show this. They appear sometimes like a madman, totally possessed on wanting more and more service, because Shastra tells us, the more you serve God, the more he reveals his nature of his activities and his appearance. And one who knows the activities of my appearance and disappearance, surely upon leaving his body, does not take birth in the material world again. So the devotee, he trusts this with his heart and his soul, and he takes devotional service up as his life and soul, because he knows these are not material scriptures. It's not a matter of just sitting down and trying to understand it like some mundane science book. No, it's a matter of rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his direct representatives, and the knowledge will in turn be revealed to you by the process. This is why Prabhupada is mentioning one doesn't have to be some learned scholar to understand Krishna. He just has to serve his lotus feet. He just has to render devotional service purely to a Vaishnava, and the knowledge is revealed. Because this is spiritual. This is not material. So Krishna, he's showing us that he is completely spiritual. There's nothing material about him. We can tell by the association he keeps. His friends, he's got the best friends. His parents, he's got the best parents. His pastimes, they're the best. They're pretty awesome. I don't have pastimes like that. I don't have friends like that. I don't have family like that. Krishna does, because they're completely spiritual. Krishna, he likes to be glorified by his friends and the activities that he's doing, right? Like we sing every morning, the song that we just got done singing. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Giri Bharadari, Shodanandana Brajajana Ranjana, Yamunatira Vanachari. This is glorification of his associates and his pastimes. Krishna loves this. In fact, we call different names of Krishna by glorifying him. So Krishna, he's never alone because he's got the best of friends. And he's always in bliss, and always being in bliss, it means being nicely associating with blissful people around you. But we have doubts because actually we don't experience any of this. We try to cultivate some type of relationship in the material world, and due to our selfish motive and our selfish desire, we're not fulfilled by this relationship whatsoever. We might get a little fulfillment, but actually we're left feeling empty inside because it's like, I'm trying to give to this relationship. I'm giving 75%, or I'm giving 50%, and I feel you're only giving 10%. I feel you're only giving 20%. Because actually behind this relationship, we have some type of selfish motive, thinking I want something in return. So in that way, the relationship, it's not completely satisfying to us. In that way, the pastimes that we're carrying out in this material world, because they're completely tinged, even though they're a reflection of the spiritual world, they're tinged with all types of unclean anarthas in the heart that Prabhupada is talking about in the purport. So they leave us unfilled, unlike these spiritual pastimes of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which are free from this. They're full of bliss. So over time, as we render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we become purified of these unwanted things of this heart. We become free from the three things, profit, adoration, and distinction, that are so prominent in today's age. Everybody feels, oh, I'm here for such a short time. I need to make some money. I need to make some profit. I need something to show for my time here, right? Isn't it? So many people, they want adoration. They want to be recognized. Oh, this person, he's so great. He's doing such a nice job. So many people, they want distinction, especially in devotional life. There's not a lot of distinction there, actually. So early on, when devotees, or late, depending on if the devotee gets properly purified, a lot of devotees have this tendency. Everybody does, but it comes out because it's like we're all wearing the same thing. We're all singing the same song. We're all doing the same thing every day. So, let me be seen. I want to be appreciated. Everybody wants to be appreciated. Everybody wants to stand out from the crowd because we're all individuals. Right? It's pure to have individuality. It's not that we're becoming robots, but Prabhupada is showing us when this occurs, we can trace it back to sex desire, and this is how we can purify it. Because, when we're seeing, oh, I'm doing this because I want to be noticed, or I'm doing this because I want to make some money, or I'm doing this because, I want to stand out in the crowd, we can actually trace it back. Wow, these are subtle manifestations of my sex desire. I'm actually not free from these things. So when we read Prabhupada's books, we think, okay, sex desire. He's saying get free from sex desire. All right, I'll be celibate. I've been celibate for a while. I'm okay with the sex desire. We might think that, I've given it some time, I'm not doing these things anymore. But then we read, oh, Prabhupada's saying I can't have want of profit or adoration or distinction. What the heck? We start to read his books and feel, am I going to be left with anything? He's saying I have to be free from all of these things, but we'll be free with we'll be left with the highest thing, love of God. If we actually can become free from all of these material things that are described in Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll actually develop real love of God and be able to render service unto him. That's the goal of life. That's the perfection of our life if we can do it. And we've been given this nice chance. So let's hang on to it like anything. There's a nice example given of this, or that it's not so much given. I was thinking of this when I was looking over the purport this morning. Musicians there and artists, this is actually like the how they make their money is adoration, distinction, and profit. So people who have previous, they're artistic or some musical ability, or they, made a little money doing these things, naturally, like it's an obvious thing that's manifested in that type of personality. Not to say it's not manifested in everyone else to an equal degree, but this is just kind of an obvious way it's manifested in the artist type, because he's making his living of being appreciated, his painting, his music, you know. So there's a story that I had heard a while ago. I used to be musician, artist kind of type. I was really into different musicians, and there's this musician who he was very expert guitarist, and he was a studio musician. So bands would get him to play very difficult parts that they had written. There was a composer, musician who would write very intricate, difficult compositions, and he would actually hold tryouts for his band. And in this way, he came across one year on this expert musician. This was sometime in the 70s. And this musician, he played on his track. And sure enough, he actually played on many tracks, and a lot of the tracks he played on in the studio became hits. They became on the top charts at one point or other. And, you know, the record, they achieved platinum status or whatever. And more or less, he was a studio musician, so he wasn't touring with the bands or anything like that. So nobody knew who he was, you know. So he was sitting down one day and with an old associate who he used to make music with, and he was sitting down at a restaurant, and they were having some lunch together, and, you know, talking, relaxing. And sure enough, one of the songs that he played on in the studio comes on the radio, and he starts to hear one of the waitresses singing along with the song as she's going about her duty. But yet he's sitting in this restaurant. Everyone knows the song and nobody knows who he is. So he's like, man, what the heck? You know, what's the point of life? My life is so miserable. I spent my life's work. I have all these great songs that I played music on, but nobody knows who I am. So, you know, this desire, it comes up, and he stops one of the waitresses and he says, that song you're singing, I played on that track. You know, don't you know? And she's just like, I don't know who you are. Who's this crazy guy? You know, and then he just like puts his head down on the table and just lamenting, just like crying like anything. What the heck? Is my life worthless? You know, so in the material world, everybody's after this, you know, and they're very difficult things to get free from. Sex desire is the hardest thing to shake. And Prabhupada said, book distribution, it is one of the most purifying services, because you're constantly faced with having to overcome sex desire. You're talking to so many walks of life, so many different forms of people, so many attractive forms sometimes, so many situations arise, and book distribution, it's a great way to get purified from this. You know, in fact, any process of devotional service, you can get sufficiently purified from this sex desire. We just have to keep rendering it with firm conviction and faith and enthusiasm, and we'll become purified from it over due course of time. So thank you for kindly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the